Hey, ich bin Marlene Vogel und genau deshalb habe ich schon Anfang Januar mit Sänger Dan Smith gesprochen. Dan hat mir verraten, welche Tradition er für sich zu Weihnachten gefunden hat und, kleiner Spoiler, leider alles andere als feierlich, wie er selbst am liebsten aus dem Alltag flüchtet und was für ihn persönlich das größte Laster ist. Ich würde mal sagen, los geht's. Dan, thanks for taking the time. How are you? How are you holding up in these challenging times, I'll call it, we still live in?
Yeah. Hi, Marlene. I'm good, thanks. It's exciting to be releasing the album and talking about it. I've been all right, thanks. I've been just trying to stay busy. I had my second bout of COVID at Christmas. I seem to get it every Christmas, but it's become an annual tradition for me. Um, but I was fine. I've been vaccinated and boosted, and it was not too bad for me, luckily. But yeah, no, I've made this album and lots of other music as well, and written for other people, and just stayed as busy as possible. So yeah, it's been a strange time, but I feel very lucky to be able to make music and to have a roof over my head and to be healthy and my family to be healthy and all that kind of stuff. How about you? How you been?
I've been good, thank you. Luckily, I did not start a tradition like you did, and I'm not making music myself, but I get the pleasure to listen to music that other people put out, and so I did listen to "Give Me the Future,"
Oh,
and so many artists I feel are resurrecting the 80s and 90s these days. And what made you want to go all out on that future theme and conjure up this whole sci-fi dimension of the new record?
we started the idea of the album before the pandemic, and then I guess as we were living through the lockdowns and continuing to make music, these ideas of escapism and wanting to kind of use technology and use your imagination and use your mind to kind of take yourself to other places. It just became, real life. That became what we were living. And I used a lot of the first couple of lockdowns just to revisit loads of films. And the genre of science fiction was really interesting to me. It's all about different versions of the future and how writers speak to the kind of problems and complexities of the societies that we live in by imagining where they could go in different versions of the future, and that's fascinating to me. So it was just a really nice world to kind of live in, and we decided the album would be a science fiction, and it allowed us to talk about like how constantly evolving technology is changing who we are as people and how we interact with each other and how we live our lives. And yeah, I guess we wanted to make something that felt really kind of electronic and kind of retro futuristic, but also really human at points as well. So it was all about playing with those ideas and having fun with them and wanting to make a big, weird pop record and music that you could dance to, music that we were dancing around the studio to. And it was like a great distraction for us. I feel like real life at the moment is a lot like a science fiction. Everything is moving and changing so quickly, and sometimes it's amazing and sometimes it's terrifying. And we all just spent 2 years inside living our lives through screens, which is fascinating and not something I think any of us ever expected. So yeah, it's that's the kind of setting for the album. And we look at the future all the time. We see it in the news every day, how climate change is affecting different places all over the world and different communities. And so we're constantly made to think about the future and what that might look like. So yeah, I guess just a nice, light-hearted, easy breezy topic for an album.
Just the usual, no, but you just said it's so funny that you started prior to the pandemic, and then you've written during the pandemic when we were all forced to stay home and we were living like in a parallel universe, kind of.
Yeah.
What's your take on things? I feel like somehow we're so close to like a dystopian setting like the one you've created.
Yeah, I mean, it's been so surreal, hasn't it? Cycling around central London and it being entirely empty and there being nobody there, it feels like feels like feels like an apocalyptic film, but these are real images you're seeing with your own eyes, everyone being trapped inside, pandemics, like lockdowns, quarantines, all of these things that are, we know them so well, but from the language of like films and of cinema and of fiction. So it's just almost like incomprehensibly surreal living through those things and coming, feeling like we're maybe coming out the other side, and life goes on and is still wonderful and funny and boring and awful and sad and happy and all of those things, so it's strange. But yeah, I guess I'm also interested in like the science fiction of the past and the versions of the future that they predicted, that we proved them wrong, or we proved them right, or we have outgrown those versions of the future. And I think of like, I don't know, Minority Report, based on a Philip K. Dick novel, short story. Minority Report is, back when that came out, it was like, oh, driverless cars, that's weird, and like targeted advertising, what the fuck, no way, and look at us now. It's just interesting to see how we have progressed.
Yeah, how things that you could never have imagined before now are just reality in everyday life somehow.
Totally. And the album's not meant to be judgmental, it's meant to kind of hold a mirror up. And I sort of put it back on myself, and I kind of take the piss out of myself throughout the album, because I'm like, I will always hold my hands up and say I'm the worst phone addict in the entire world. So I'm not coming from a place of judgment, but I know that it's not necessarily good for me, but I still do it. So yeah, it's meant to just be presenting the absurdities of life and the future in a way that's kind of hopefully distracting and funny and thought-provoking.
I hear you. Now you just mentioned distracting and maybe also dreaming, right? Because in Distorted Light Beam, the lyrics go, I'll stick to dreaming, come see what I see, feeling like if this is life, I'm choosing fiction. Now, set in our world, what's your favorite way to escape reality apart from making music and apart from sticking to your phone all the time?
Yeah. I mean, it's fiction. Like I grew up so obsessed with films. Like I love escaping into a different world via a film for like an hour and a half or 2 hours, and reading as well. I studied English at university, and I love when you're in the midst of a good book and you don't really want to be anywhere else, and you're existing in this weird space between the page and your head, and it can take you somewhere, and you can occupy the mind of a completely different person who's had a completely different life. And I think that's amazing and really important. I like sometimes like running, just going for like a run. I'm not very good at it, and I don't like it very much, but it can be so good for your head, and it can clear your mind. I listen to a lot of podcasts and a lot of audiobooks, and they're so good for taking you somewhere else as well. Yeah, I don't know. I'm not someone that plays loads of video games, but like loads of my mates, they will spend like the whole weekend in a video game, and like how fun to get to, to be a fucking like ninja or whatever for a few hours of the day. Yeah, that's the thing I think with this album, that it's kind of nodding towards all these different things we do to distract ourselves and take ourselves out of our own minds. And I'm fascinated by those. I think escapism is fascinating. It can be amazing, and it can be really fun, and it can be really invigorating, and it can be really addictive, and it can be quite dark,
Yeah.
And also, what does it then mean to come back to your life and be like, oh, this is it? This is all I've got, So it's a complicated thing.
Yeah, I feel like it can be a blessing and a curse at the same time, right? Yeah. Like there's so much things that you can use for yourself or for the world, and then there's this very dangerous part to it as well. Yeah. Now, going through the record, I noticed that in between songs, you've got interludes, you get the spoken word. And I was wondering, like, what value do you assign as an artist to an album as a whole and its composition, especially like in a time where it's so common to just go release single songs?
Yeah, I mean, for me, it's really important. I find that making a body of work is really helpful, because it means that you will go places from song to song that you might not otherwise go, because that in the next song you're going somewhere completely different. So it allows you to be probably more bold and more experimental. For me, there's a kind of narrative arc to this album that takes you from the beginning to the end. but I hear that very clearly. But I'm sure lots of other people listening will be like, it's just a bunch of songs, which is completely fine. I love to think of albums as like a kind of a film in your head, and so we try and make them as visual as possible. And we use music and spoken word and and sound effects and like all different kinds of things across the album to take you somewhere in your head. Yeah, like we've released a bunch of songs from this album, and part of me is excited to release those, and other parts of me is like, hold them back. I want people to hear it as one big thing, so it's kind of hard. But like Riz Ahmed's track Promises for me is fucking amazing, and we sent him the album and asked him to write something in response to it, and he nailed it. He completely knocked it out of the park. Like what he wrote is so beautiful, and it completely sums up what it is to be human and have intimacy in a world that is so digitized. And it's a really like tender moment in the album, and I'm really proud of it. I'm proud of him for writing it as well. Like it's really cool. But that's, with this album as well, it was about collaboration. It was about bringing other people in and kind of shining a light on other people who are great. If that's like another friend who's a writer, or Bim, who sings the gospel stuff on the last track, it's about having these moments that surprise people and that you're not expecting. A kind of, in an ideal world, someone would hear the album having never heard any of the songs from start to finish and have no idea what's coming next, because the whole album is about going into your mind and into technology and into whatever the internet might look like in the future, and it could take you anywhere, like back in time, forward in time, back into the room, into the real world, and off again into space, and that's sort of what was fun with the album. Was it was a kind of like choose your own adventure from song to song.
Yeah, I hear you. And you've worked with Ryan Tedder as well. How has that affected the record?
Yeah, so we co-wrote and co-produced Distorted Light Beam with Ryan, which was great. He pushed that sound quite hard, and then we took it and we kind of put it on steroids and like made it way harder and added loads of stuff. It was fun. Like he's a very different guy to us. He's super positive, upbeat American man, and we are very dry, grumpy Brits from London. So it was quite funny, working with him over Zoom was he's bouncing off the walls in sunny LA, and we're like, hello, from our basement dark studio in London. It was
pouring rain.
Yeah, exactly, in the pouring rain. So yeah, that was kind of fun and funny. Quite a lot of like funny conversations there, but he was helpful. Like we played him the album, and he told us what he thought. He told us what songs he thought were good, and there's a song called No Bad Days on the album that's really sad and really sparse, but Ryan heard it and was like, I think that song's really special. I think you should spend more time on it, and he kind of shone a spotlight on that song in a way that like no one else in our team had particularly picked it out. So I'm really grateful to him, to his ears. He came in quite late in the process, but sometimes it's quite helpful to have someone who's not involved listen to something and just give you some honest thoughts. So that was cool. And we also worked with a guy called Rami Yacoub, who is like an amazing Swedish songwriter who lives in LA. And me and him wrote 3 of the songs, Back to the Future, Stay Awake, and Thelma and Louise, in 2 hours on Zoom one evening. And we started those songs, and then I took them and worked on them for months and months and months, and wrote the lyrics and rewrote the lyrics and rewrote the lyrics. And but yeah, it was just quite fun. It was nice. It was a nice opportunity to try and get other people to push me and to push us into places we wouldn't normally go. And I think the album is all the more interesting for it.
Yeah. Leaving your comfort zone maybe as well.
Totally. Yeah.
Now, Give Me the Future, the title track of the record. I love that line. The song isn't done, new melodies rise up with the sun. How much beauty do you find in uncertainty?
I mean, my favorite thing in the world is writing songs. And the best moment is when you're just playing around and something comes out and you're like, whoa, I don't know what that is, but it's making me feel something. And the satisfaction there is like indescribable. And, that's why there's a lot of things about being in a band that I find quite weird and uncomfortable. But when it comes to writing songs and being in the studio and trying to come up with new things and create something out of nothing, that makes me so happy. And so, yeah, I guess that's like life throws weird things at you, and unexpected stuff, and sometimes it can fuck you up, and sometimes it can make you a better person. And I think it's just about kind of rolling with the punches a bit, isn't it? So yeah.
So no one knows what the future holds, right? But what are your plans for the upcoming year? I saw that you're playing live shows at the end of the month. Is that seriously happening?
I think so. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, it's wild. Like in the UK, I guess that seems to be happening. If I've like I said, I've had COVID twice, and I've been boosted, and I think all of these gigs will be, precautions will be in place, and testing and masks, and as they should be. But I think we're just going to see what happens. We're rehearsing at the moment, and if it goes ahead, it goes ahead. I hope it does. But the most important thing is that people are okay and people are safe. So we won't do anything stupid. But I've got friends in a band called the Wombats, and they're off on tour at the moment, and it's mad. It's so surreal. They're like, I can't believe we're in venues playing gigs and people are coming. Like it's wild.
Yeah.
But,
Yeah.
that's the thing that's so fascinating with COVID and how people react to it. Like everyone is in a different place in their head. Some people are still really anxious and terrified, and some people are way over it and don't want to think about it. And it's really complicated, isn't it?
Yeah, and I feel like it's different in any part of the world also. But fingers crossed that everything is gonna work out for you, and then you can go on tour and play shows and release your record.
Yes, well, that's definitely happening.
Yes. So thank you so much for your time, Dan.
Thank you. Thanks so much. It was lovely to speak to you.
Same here. Take care.
Ciao, ciao.
Bye-bye.
Bye.